This is the Powerful Introvert Podcast. I'm Greg Weinger. In this episode, I spoke with Coach Josh Wood. He's an online fitness coach and TEDx speaker based in Hobart, Tasmania. He's a very personable guy who's in the business of helping people change and achieve their personal goals, no matter what they are in life. And of course, no matter what your personality type, introvert or extrovert, health and fitness is the key to all that. We sat down and discussed his background growing up in the US, his current life in exotic Tasmania, what it's like to show up as an introvert in a profession where being extrovert is the norm. Josh shares his insights into his coaching practice and helping busy individuals achieve their health goals. We then go deep into his TED Talk experience, talk about self-confidence, motivation, and of course, his famous concept of eating like an adult through 6 important habits for mindful eating. I had a great time talking to Coach Josh. I hope you enjoy this episode. All right. Welcome to the Powerful Introvert Podcast. I'm here with Josh Wood. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome to have you here. You are in the business of helping people change. That's a big theme here on our podcast. And so I'm really excited to talk about some of these topics with you here today.
Thank you. I do my best to help people change.
Yeah, that's right. You're a coach here about it, but we'll get into that in a minute. I have a more important question to address, and that is, where can one find the best apples in the world?
Oh, that's an easy one. Tasmania, the Apple Isle.
I'm so fascinated by this. I don't believe I've ever had a Tasmanian apple, and we are pretty proud of our apples in the Pacific Northwest. The Washington apples are really excellent, but so I'm going to have to sample one of these and accept that challenge.
Yeah, honestly, a little side note here, Pacific Northwest is basically the exact same climate as we have here in Tasmania. Tasmania was one of the biggest apple exporters worldwide until the 1950s, and then New Zealand took over that. But if you are ever on the look for an Australian apple, if you had a Granny Smith, this is where they originated, in Australia.
All right. Well, that's good. Maybe I've had one unwittingly and didn't realize it. I am curious what life is like in Tasmania.
So I lived on Vancouver Island in British Columbia for a few years as well, a couple of years. That was 2016 to 18. And I grew up in Minnesota, in the Midwest, in the U.S. But a lot of my family is from Oregon, Washington. I was born in Portland, actually. So this sort of is something that's been part of my family history for a long time. I've explored the American Pacific Northwest. I've been up through British Columbia, Vancouver Island, Alaska, and it's all very similar. If you think of Oregon 20 years ago, it's small. We're not a big place. The whole island, we're about the landmass of Ireland, but we have, just barely 500,000 people across the whole space. The main city where I live, Hobart, we have 300,000 in the greater Hobart area, maybe 350. So not super populated. We got lots of hipster coffee shops and cafes and microbreweries and distilleries and just great food across the board.
It's sounding very much like Portland even now, but maybe a little quieter as of 20 years ago. I'm pushing 20 years in Portland, about 17 right now.
Oh, nice.
We've talked a little prior to this. You had described yourself as an introvert in an extrovert's profession. Could you first describe your profession a little bit for the audience, and then we can get into how being an introvert might impact you with that?
Sure. So I have two main roles. I run my own business, Strong for Life Online Coaching. So it's a fitness coaching business based online, working with people all over the world. My focus is primarily on lifestyle and longevity. So getting fit and capable to do what you love for as long as you love to do it. The other thing I do is for a number of years now, I've been teaching health and fitness education. So I've taught the personal training courses, the certifications here, as well as the massage courses for a number of years. Both very sort of extroverted jobs. Less so working for myself, like working in gyms. That's very extroverted, especially if you're running classes and stuff and you're trying to keep the energy up. That's not my thing. I'm not the hype personal trainer. I'm not like those spin instructors who are dancing across the platform with the rave music and the lights. I'm a very direct and focused trainer. And, my thing is I always guarantee results. So we get the results, but if you're looking for someone who's going to, hype you up the whole time, that ain't me. There's a lot of extroverts in the industry, but, I find that just incredibly tiring.
Yeah. So It's sort of natural for the one-on-one, but less so just getting up and hyping people up.
Bingo.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you ever run across a client where you feel like it's not a match for that reason?
I feel like I used to a bit more, but because people come to me knowing my brand, reading my materials, following me on social media, they kind of get who I am, which makes it a lot easier. I haven't had anybody that I've worked with that really needs that like super intense classic personal trainer motivation. I get a lot more people that are like, just tell me what to do and I'm going to do it. It's like, sweet, we're going to get along great. So less so now, more so when I was doing more group classes and things like that. And then people only
Hmm.
see the coach Josh that's running a group class as opposed to the one-on-one coach Josh, which is a lot less intense.
That's kind of the beauty of the internet, where your people will find you, your clientele will find you. I'm sure there's no shortage of people who you can reach that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it ends up being a lot of folks like me that I work with who are either training at home or they're trying to figure out how to do that, dads, entrepreneurs, other people with ADHD who have a hard time staying on task, like that crowd kind of all starts to congregate when you find the right person.
Nice. So, and we also talked about you spent time as a backpacking guide.
Yeah, I did that for a few years here in Tasmania, running a 4-day trek on what's called the Tasman Peninsula, some of the tallest sea cliffs in the southern hemisphere, some of the tallest sea cliffs in the world, running 4-day, 3-night group backpacking trips as part of a larger company with co-guides.
It's another profession that I think requires leadership and communication skills.
Yeah.
So, do you find your comfort zone with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you put on a persona and you just go, okay, this is who I'm going to be for the next 4.5 days, 4 days. It's a little bit different to how you might interact in your home life or with your friends. Being on the leadership role is fine, especially with the co-guide who might be a little bit higher energy. Like I'm much more like I'm good at storytelling. I love telling the stories of the land and talking about things that have happened and what's going on with what we're seeing and where we're walking each day. Love that stuff. A lot of socialization, being with a group of say 14 people in the backcountry in a lodge each night, cooking dinner and stuff like that. That can be harder and much more fatiguing. Whereas there's a lot more sort of extroverted folks in that industry. You get a lot of introverts because we all like the outdoors and want to share that and be outside, and we like the quiet of the bush. But you also get a lot of young extroverts who are just there to just socialize and and be excited about everything. And I'm like, okay, you do that. I will manage logistics.
Yeah. And when you're kind of stuck in a group like that, you're all kind of walking together. Sometimes the introverts are going to want to need breaks and go get some time apart.
Yeah, it can be, but it's also like it's a little bit easier when I don't have to yell. Like I don't have to yell over a bunch of people, say in a gym. You get a lot more one-on-one time to just sort of walk and chat with people down the line. And so it's not too bad. It is tiring trying to manage the socialization, the lodges and things like that. But like on the trail, it's just lovely.
Nice. Well, I see how you found your path through that. It sounds amazing just to spend that time in the outdoors that way. What a great experience.
Oh yeah, it's got its challenges. You're sometimes out there and it's 100K winds and you got hail and other times it's 40
Wow.
degrees Celsius. And so that's like 100 degrees in full sun. And you get, the challenges of nature, but you also get the peace that comes with that.
I also wanted to ask you about your TEDx talk experience. Public speaking is a fear for many people. It doesn't matter, introvert or extrovert. It's one of these things we're hardwired to fear. So I'm just curious, first, how did you decide to do that? And then how do you feel about that? And what was your preparation?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It was the second year it ran here in Hobart. Like there was a year in 2014 that they ran a TEDx event, and then there wasn't anything until 2023. And so they had an event then. And so it kind of got a bit of a name for itself. And then the second year was coming around. I didn't really know much about it, but a friend was like, hey, applications are open for this thing. You should apply. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay. I'll give it a go. And so it's an application process. And what I didn't realize is that anybody in the world can apply to any TEDx event. So there was international applications and a lot of local ones, not just local to Tasmania, but Australia-wide as well. And so I just applied, and then, left it sitting there and didn't think too much about it. And then a couple months later, I get an email saying, "Hey, you've been shortlisted to the top 50." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And they're like, "So now you need to do a 1-minute video pitch of your idea." And the event had a theme, the ripple effect. It's like my idea was trying to get people to eat like an adult. And so I had to do a 60-minute pitch about that and how that fits in with the ripple effect. So I did that, sent that in, and a couple weeks
Sorry,
later,
how
like,
long?
great. 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I think I said 60 minutes. 60 seconds. It's a very, very short pitch.
Much more concise.
A little bit more concise. Yeah, 60 minutes. Jeez. Yeah, so did the little pitch and sent it in, and then a few weeks later, I got another email that says, "Hey, you've been selected as one of the 10 speakers out of 300 and something applications." And I was like, "Cool, all right." And they're like, "So we're going to get the cohort together and start talking about the process, give you the resources on putting your talk together, because there's official TED resources on how the talk should go and what visuals you can and can't use and how you're supposed to use them." All from original application to speaking day. It's about 6 months of doing stuff and preparing for this 15-minute talk, 15 minutes max. And I think I clocked in at like 14:20 something, 14:30.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent months just like taking this concept, how to eat like an adult, which is something that I've been using for quite a while, an infographic, an explanation, a guide on how to eat like an adult. And then I gave these basically 3-hour workshops on health and nutrition, culminating in these habits on how to eat like an adult. So do that as like a 3-hour workshop. And I had to kind of condense the core message into 15 minutes. Most of the work was like cutting that down, figuring out what the essence is, going back to the organizers and be like, "Okay, how does this work here? And, what do you think about this?" And working with them to try and hone the message in. And then it was just practice, practice, practice. It was a lot for a very short talk.
How many times do you think you practiced that speech?
Many dozens, maybe hundreds. It's one of those things, because we had a rehearsal, a stage rehearsal, the Monday before the event. The event was, so we had a stage rehearsal on the Monday where we actually got up on the actual stage and everyone did a little run through, not of the whole thing, but like being able to, stay on the platform where we're supposed to be speaking, making sure our slides or visuals or sounds were working, making sure we're good with the mic. And the thing for me was like, I get up there and like I've done a lot of public speaking. I've been teaching in classrooms and running workshops and podcasts and all videos and all that kind of stuff for years. So I'm fine talking. We're just having a conversation. It's good. But the thing that really threw me is there is a lot of lights. There is a lot of really big lights shining in my face. And it was really disconcerting. I was like blinded. I was like, oh, so this is what those guys on stage are always talking about, where they can't see the audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's just shadows and bright lights. And so after that, I was like, that really threw me. Like, I was like, that shouldn't throw me, but it did. It was a very strange thing to not be able to see who I'm talking to. And so I went home, and for 6 days, I set up all my lights here in my office, and I had like 4 or 5 standing lights, and I just cranked them up and I shined them in my face, and I went through my talk, and I went through my talk, and I went through my talk over and over and over with all these lights shining in my face, so I couldn't see anything except those lights in my eyes. And that was the biggest hurdle for me. It was like that, just really like disorienting. Like, I can't see where things are, who I'm talking to. All I can hear is the murmurs of the crowd and the awkward chuckles when I call them out on, and not eating like an adult. But yeah, it was a very, very interesting process that took a lot of adjustment, because it's very different to give a speech than it is to engage in coaching or a workshop with a group of people.
So it sounds like in general, you were pretty comfortable with public speaking and the whole concept leading into that.
So, there's nerves standing backstage behind the curtain, listening to the person in front of you, waiting for them to call your name. And I'm sitting there and I'm pacing and I'm running through my talk under my breath and I'm mumbling and I'm walking around and pacing and listening. And then they're like, "Josh Wood." And I walk out and we're good. We're fine. But, you still have to talk yourself up. Like, I've engaged in a lot of high pressure situations, whether, guiding people in the wilderness, whether it's combat sports. I've competed in boxing and Jiu Jitsu. I've competed in powerlifting. I've been on platforms, putting everything on the line, trying to lift as much as possible. I've, did strongman a few years back and did this log press, big metal log. You throw it up over your head, and I passed out under that and collapsed with this, 80-kilo log above my head. And I had my face broken in the ring, and all these things that are high stakes.
The log didn't fall on you. I just want to be. I was worried about you.
No, it didn't fall on me.
Yeah.
I passed out under it, standing there with the log over my head, and I fell in such a way that it fell forward. But
That's
it's
good.
one of those. Thank you. It's just one of those things where it's like standing on a stage and getting ready for this. I was like, nothing's gonna fall on me. No one's trying to punch me in the face. I'm not having to lift up any heavy things or injure myself. There's no risk there. Like, this is pretty safe. This is fine. Like, the worst that happens is I stumble over my words a little bit. And I do that every day. So that's fine. So it's this constant talking like, this is what I've done. This is where I've been. These are things I've done that were way worse. Like getting up and talking about something I'm passionate about. I can do this.
I like that. So self-talk is clearly a part of that and something you've become skilled at. And how do you incorporate that into your coaching practice?
Self-talk?
Yeah, the motivational talk, that kind of thing.
A lot of it comes back to contextualizing what we're dealing with, where the challenges are. And a lot of that comes to self-confidence. And, I think people generally have the wrong idea about self-confidence because we kind of grew up in an era where, in my, I'm 36. I think I came just at the tail end of the participation award era where everybody got an award for everything they did. And that became a little bit less popular as I got older. But it's, at the tail end of this era where it's like, just be happy with yourself. Just be confident. Just be confident. And it's like, that's not a real thing. You gain confidence by proving your competence to yourself. I have done this, so I can now do this similar thing. I can extrapolate on a previous experience where I've overcome something challenging. I can apply that mindset or that experience to this new thing that's similar. I've had my face broken up by being punched a lot in a ring in front of a bunch of people cheering for me getting beat up. Is that going to happen this time? No. Okay, well, I survived that. I used to lift really heavy things in front of a lot of people on a platform. Can I do that? Yeah. Okay. Can you talk? Yeah. Okay, great. And so this process of slowly acclimatizing yourself to challenging things allows you to gain that confidence because you've proven competence to yourself. And when it comes to coaching and writing programs and training people, it's the same basic process. We're slowly introducing new challenges that are one step above previous challenges, and knowing that you accomplished the previous thing lets you know that you can accomplish this thing that's at a slightly more difficult level. And then 6 months, a year down the line, you've accomplished 100 difficult things, and you realize, oh, I can just keep doing this. You climb a mountain one step at a time. You look at the mountain, you say, I can never do that. Well, can you take one step? Well, yeah. Okay. Can you take two? Yeah. Okay. Can you take 100? Yeah. Well, I took 99. Why can't I take 100? And then the next thing you know, you're at the top of the mountain. So it's this constant accumulation of overcoming experiences that let you go, you know what? I did this, so I can do this next step. And it's just those baby steps over time, and just keep doing that. It's the same in any endeavor. The mountain climbing one is pertinent because, I spent a lot of time hiking and trekking around mountains, including in the Himalayas. And I've got clients that climb actual mountains, like proper rock climbing or mountain climbing with the ice picks and everything. And it's always the same thing. You just start off with one step, and then over time, you don't even think about the next one. It's just what you do.
I really love that. It's a great general framework. I love the framing about confidence really comes from proving your competence just again and again. There's some similarities to the progressive exposure idea with overcoming fears. It's a similar thing. You're proving your competence in the
Yeah.
situation of public speaking by,
Yep.
you raise your hand and say your word and keep upping the challenge. It sounds like the same process.
Yeah, there was an interview or an article I read like many years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I think it was, David Blaine, the like street magician
Mhm.
slash like performance artist. He said something, and I don't know anything about the rest of the context of the article, but I just remember this thing. It's like someone asked him, like, how do you work your way up to living in an ice block for a week or underwater in a chamber for a week and all these crazy things? He's like, well, I start off accumulating discomfort, and it's as simple as, as if I'm walking down the street, I start trailing my hand through the bushes. All he did to start doing this crazy stuff was started trailing his hand through all the sticks and the spikes and the bushes wherever he was walking. And that was the first step. And then eventually you live underwater for 10 days or whatever it is he did. It's like, that's the process for everything. You just start off accumulating challenges, overcoming challenges, accumulating stresses that you overcome in very, 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 very small amounts. And then just a little bit more, and then just a little bit more. And then you're at the top of the mountain.
And I think what we're talking about here, this is your overall approach to change. And there's a strong tie in here to mindfulness, where you're becoming aware of discomfort. And typically our reaction that we've learned habitually is just eliminate the discomfort as fast as possible, take the aspirin, binge eat,
Yeah.
eat away the emotions, like, from your talk. And really, mindfulness is just all about that, taking the breath and just noticing it and just being with that discomfort. And you start to notice this discomfort will pass in time. And then you can take on more discomfort. That doesn't even register as discomfort. It's just like, oh, there's that
Exactly.
feeling.
Yeah, and at a certain point, you start to seek it because you know what it does for you. It's kind of like when you first start going to the gym, you're in a whole lot of pain. But eventually you start seeking that. You start going, I want this feeling because it means that I am doing something. I'm accomplishing something. I'm moving closer to where I want to be. The soreness in my muscles is not a bad thing. It's a sign that I've worked hard and I've earned something.
Want to talk a little bit more about going about change and how you approach that in your practice. A lot of people that I'm talking to are aspiring leaders who are quieter, speaking up, especially when there's a lot of loud people in a situation, or leading a group, breaking in can be pretty uncomfortable. So I guess the one question I have for you is a big part of this is self-acceptance and recognizing, okay, well, my natural inclination is this, but I want to have more influence. So I'm going to need to challenge myself and make myself uncomfortable in these situations. So how do you think about balancing, acknowledging where you are, but also being willing to push yourself?
Yeah, I mean, the first step is acknowledgement. Like, you have to know yourself to understand what you want in life and where you want to go. You have to go, okay, this is my natural limitations. This is where my strengths are. And so I need to figure out how to shore up my limitations. How do I shore up these gaps in my capabilities? And for a lot of people who are not extremely extroverted, like that public speaking, public engagement, whatever it is a hard thing to just jump into. And, a lot of like speaking coaches and things like that teach you how to do the speaking, but you have to get to the point where you're able to do the speaking or, whatever the domain is. And the number one lesson is always, it always comes back to exposure. Just be in those situations. There's a few ways to go about it. So, one of my side passions is Irish traditional music. And so I've partaken in that for many years now, and going to sessions is a big part of the Irish scene. So you show up at a pub where other musicians are playing, someone starts playing a tune, you join in. And it's like, I wanted to be part of that culture, but I didn't feel comfortable playing in public, around people, with people. People play different. I don't play like that. What am I supposed to do? And the first step was put myself in situations where you had to do that. You take away the choices. First thing was acclimatization, like show up, be there, make sure people see you, say hi, be friendly. And this is perfectly applicable to business too. Show up to community meetings, show up to events and expos and whatever's going on that's relevant to what you're trying to accomplish. Show up and be there. You don't have to say a lot, don't have to do a lot, but smile, shake hands, make sure people see you, make sure you're seen, because then eventually people will ask you questions. And that was what I did with the music stuff too, is I just kept showing up and listening. And then eventually I showed up with an instrument and people go, hey, come join us. It's like, okay. So I sit down at the table. I don't know a lot of the tunes. So I just listen. I listen and ask questions. Listen, ask questions. Listen, ask questions. What's this tune? What's going on here? I noticed you did this. And then eventually you're there and people start asking you for stuff. Hey, why don't you start a set? Why don't you play a tune? What kind of business are you in? It's all the same. And, after a while, you can say no. It's like, I'm just here to listen and learn. I'm just here to see what's going on. I'm just here to network, meet some people. I wanted to see what the industry's like, whatever the domain. But eventually you can only say no so many times. You got to put yourself in those situations where eventually you don't have a choice. And when it comes to overcoming dangerous challenges, one thing I've always done is just sign up for things. I started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu after like a 15-year hiatus. I did it when I was in my youth. I started at the beginning of last year in January. Started in January. There was an announcement that a tournament was coming up in 3.5 months. I signed up right away in my first week back. First week at Jiu Jitsu, I signed up for this tournament, put my money down. All right, I'm locked in. There's no choice. I can either embarrass myself by bailing, or I can embarrass myself by not training enough and going out there and being destroyed. But I put myself in a situation in which the only option was to try. And it's the same in any domain. Put yourself in those situations. Sign up for stuff. Lock yourself in. Expose yourself over time to the situation. And then when time comes and you don't have any other choices, you participate.
Also,
it works so many ways. So many ways to do that.
There's several great examples in a solid framework just for getting yourself and overcoming some of these fears. So in your coaching practice, when someone comes to you and like, I want to make a big life change, how long will this take?
It depends. Depends how big it is. Depends how much effort you're willing to put in, how much time and capacity you have to do the work. You can make changes very quickly. But the ones that happen quickly don't usually stick around. So, when I'm working with people, I say at the end of 12 weeks, you'll be a different person. At the end of 12 weeks, you'll have things set up so that you have, a system that works for you that you can continue to follow without my help if you want it. And you can go out and become a different person. But how much of a different person are you going to be? You could be a very different person in a year. You could be a pretty different person in 6 months. You could be a little bit different person in 12 weeks. And really, there's degrees to that. There's no hard and fast rule. It's an individual thing. But every step you take in a different direction gets you closer to the different person you would rather be.
So it gives you time frames from 12 weeks to a year, just depending how large the change is. And so I assume you've seen this quite a few times in your career.
Yeah, it depends on the domain. A lot of people that I work with are people who have let themselves go. They've had a health scare and they're like, oh, if I don't, lose 20 to 50 pounds soon, I'm headed for an early grave. And some people are like, I'm on that. Like, I'll just do what it takes. And we see, 50, 60 pounds weight loss in their first year. Other people, it's 30 pounds in 6 months. It depends on the individual and how important it is to make the changes and how much capacity they have. A lot of the people I work with are like me. They're busy parents, multiple kids, and they don't have a lot of time. They're time poor. And so the amount of change you can make is minimal. But, it only takes a small stone to start an avalanche. So we're starting off just building momentum and just focusing on those baby steps, and you will be different in 12 weeks or 6 months. But, there is some limitations to our individual capacity, but there will always be change.
And what role does motivation play within all of that?
Motivation is the spark that starts the fire. Motivation is also the biggest excuse. People will be like, I'm not motivated. Well, it doesn't matter. Your heart's not going to be motivated to keep beating if you're going down the same path you're following now. Doesn't matter about motivation, but motivation is the thing that gets people to ask questions, to look for a potential change. I want to see this. I want to have I want to feel better about myself. I want to be more capable. I don't want to be tired going up the stairs to work all the time. Motivation starts people asking, how do I do that? And then discipline is what keeps people going in the medium term, but habit and lifestyle is what keeps you going forever. Like, in the beginning, you have to think hard about brushing your teeth. How many people are out there going, oh, I just don't feel motivated to brush my teeth? Very few people. And it's not taking discipline most of the time for adults, typically. Adults aren't going around going, right, it's 7:45. I am going to brush my teeth and I'm going to do it in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And blah, blah. Like it's not discipline. This is just what I do. I get up and I make a cup of coffee. I eat my breakfast, brush my teeth before I go to work. I brush my teeth before I go to bed, whatever it is. But you don't think about it anymore once it becomes habit. But the first thing is that motivation thing that says, I need to look at some options. I want to learn this thing. I want to be better in this domain. And then we build some discipline. I need to do this even though it's hard. And then you do that long enough, I just do this. I just brush my teeth.
That's great. That really rings true. The things that stick for me have to become part of me, just part of my makeup, almost an indelible habit.
Yeah, it's the only way to keep something going in the long term. We only have so much willpower. Like, we cannot just constantly fight ourselves and our routines and our natural inclinations forever. That's what discipline is. You do things even when they're hard, but at a certain point, you're not going to be able to do that forever in every domain. So you have to figure out how to integrate it or reassess. Not every goal is going to be for you.
Do you ever get people come to you where health and wellness is part of a larger goal? So maybe it's a career goal, or I want to achieve some other goal and I see this as part of it.
Yeah, all the time. Like my whole brand is Strong for Life. And if you follow me on, say, like Instagram, you see a lot of what I do with my life. For me, it's about the side quests. It's about the getting out with my kids and camping and hiking and, doing bushcrafty stuff. It's about exploring new areas, picking up new habits. It's about playing music. It's about just grabbing life by the horns and getting the most out of it when I've had enough sleep. I go to the gym. It's my job. It's my profession. But I do it in ways that are supplementary to the real goal, which is the out there. And so a lot of the people I work with are in the same boat. I do work with some specialized individuals, what are called tactical athletes. So people that are in military, fire, police, prison guards, that kind of thing. So their health and fitness is very specific to their profession. And in the past, I've worked more with, athletes that are wanting to be really good at, say, powerlifting or various sports. Fine. But most of the people that I work with are more like me in that all my training is focused around getting the most out of life, being healthy, making sure I'm happy with the way I look, and being capable to undertake the things that I want to undertake. And for me, my focus physically is Jiu Jitzu right now. So all my training is like, I need to get to Jiu Jitsu first. And then if I have time around that, it's supplementary work to make sure I stay injury free or make sure I perform better or make sure I'm not, winded all the time. So it's all focused on either Jiu Jitsu practice and improving that or being capable of going out and hiking a mountain when I get the opportunity.
I very much align with that. In my focus on leaders or leadership in companies, there's a holistic set of things you want to do if you want to show up as a higher level leader. It doesn't matter what level you're on. There's changes to sleep, to diet, to mindfulness, to exercise. Every part of that goes into making you feel good, healthy, and present and available for others so that you are reacting in the best possible way that you can in any given situation. And so to generalize beyond leadership, that seems like that goes for any endeavor in life that you want, because it's really about your overall life and not just that particular goal.
That's right. That's right. I'm a gym junkie because it supports the life I want. I don't want to live in the gym. I like the gym. The gym's nice. Great place to be. I like the people. But, my goal isn't the gym. The goal is to use the gym or, my home gym or whatever to support the other things. And, speaking of business people and leaders, one of the things that leaders have to be mindful of is like stage presence. What image are you portraying? And this is something I've got a number of white collar professionals that I've been working with for a while. And it's interesting how much more comfortable they are in boardrooms, how much more comfortable they are in front of people when they fit their suit a certain way. It's like they don't just feel comfortable in themselves because they have proven some level of capacity. I feel strong. I am physically capable. That radiates off them, but also how people react to them when they're like, that guy, his shoulders are popping out of his suit. He crosses his arms and I don't want to fight him. And, we try to move away from, especially in the last couple decades, this idea of, judging a book by its cover. But if you're in a leadership role, that is exactly the first thing that everyone is going to do. They're going to look at you and they're going to judge you based on how you walked into that room, how you shook hands, and how you commanded presence.
I can't disagree with any of that because that's always there. I personally think that it's the way that that person feels, which is coming across more
Bingo.
powerfully than even the visual. It's just like, I feel like Superman here, or I just feel great. I feel good about myself. And that's what's contributing to that presence.
Absolutely.
So,
it
yeah.
shines through. It shines through.
Mhm.
It's one of those things that's really hard to fake. Like if you feel confident because you've proven yourself to yourself, that's going to shine through.
What are these 6 habits that you need to eat like an adult?
6 main habits. The first one's the most important. The first one's called the Apple test. And I highly recommend everyone just watch the TEDx talk too, or I've got like I said, an infographic, a free guide that just you can put on your fridge. That's originally what I made, was this infographic for my sister and her husband to put on their fridge. It's the 6 habits to eat like an adult. That way you just kind of remember them. But the first one's called the Apple test. And the Apple test is probably the most important thing, because the main concept of eating like an adult is learning to make conscious decisions around your food instead of perpetually enacting habits that you got from your childhood or through teenage rebellion. It's about making conscious decisions about your food, because an adult understands that their future is created by the decisions they make today. So if you want a different future, you have to make decisions. You can't just meander through life without making decisions and just shoveling whatever is convenient into your mouth. You have to choose. So the first habit, the Apple test, is all about breaking that habitual feeding. So the idea is that if you're sitting here, so I'm sitting at my desk, and if I reach into my drawer, I'm digging around for something sweet, some little hidden snack, or you're in your pantry at home, the first step is to recognize that you're doing this, and it's usually somewhere around 10 in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 8 o'clock at night. It's always the same sort of times. But you start to recognize this looking around for something, and you stop and you ask yourself, am I actually hungry? If Coach Josh was to magically show up behind you with a beautiful Tasmanian apple, besides the obvious breaking and entering issues, but besides that, if someone was to offer you a fresh apple, like if you're hungry, you'd eat it. So you gotta ask yourself, would I eat an apple right now, or whatever fruit you like? Would I eat this apple? Would I eat real food if it was offered to me, if it was convenient?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is yes, you might actually be hungry, then go eat that thing. Go eat an apple. If the answer is no, I just want to find that Snickers bar that I'm pretty sure is in the back of my desk drawer, you're probably not even hungry. You're more likely dealing with a craving. That could be because you're stressed out, you're tired, you're not eating well in the first place, you're not drinking enough water, all these things. But first of all, recognizing if you're eating because you're hungry is the first step. Apple test. It's the most effective. It's the one I get the most messages about. It's like you just start doing that and you start actually understanding your feeding habits and then understanding if they're serving you. Because that conscious decision is really what is the whole concept of eating like an adult. If I want to buy a new car, I have to start saving money, which means actively looking at my financial situation and figuring out where I can do that. Conscious decision. If I want to lose 50 pounds this year, I can't keep doing what I've been doing. I have to do something else. And that starts with, what are you putting into your mouth? So the Apple test is probably the most important. The next one would be choosing better. So Apple test, choose better. The idea here is you don't need perfect. You just need to choose a little better every chance you get. So if you're going out to eat and, you're being in the US, you know how easy it is to upsize stuff. For 50 cents more, you can add an extra half a liter of Coca-Cola to your order. Choosing better would just be going, no, I'm fine. I'll take the small. I really love Coke. I'm going to drink a Coke. Cool. You don't need, a liter and a half. You don't need a 2-liter bottle. You have a small one. If you're thirsty, you drink more water. Making small, better choices compound over time. So choose better. So Apple test, choose better. Then we've got good enough. Good enough is good enough. This is sort of the settling for, like, if we're out to dinner and, this is Australia, so pub meals. You go out to the pub for a meal and you look at the menu and you're like, well, I'm trying to, lose a bit of weight and watch, my cholesterol or whatever it is. I'm trying to eat a little healthier. And you go out to eat and you're like, well, there's nothing that fits my perfect Weight Watchers diet, so I'm just going to eat the shrimp carbonara with extra large fries on the side and, a pint of beer. It's like, whoa. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Just aim for something good enough. If you're looking at that menu, you're like, well, everything on here isn't perfect. We go, okay, well, what would be okay? Well, if I got a chunk of meat and a little bit of a side salad, a dinner roll, most people would say that's pretty good. It might not be perfect for your diet or whatever you're working on, but it's going to be good enough. And if you're out to eat, piece of protein, bit of salad, dinner roll, stack on top of each other, that's a hamburger. And it's one of the most vilified foods on the earth, but it's honestly just meat, veg, grains. It's all the extra stuff that people get with it. So just get the burger and go easy on the sides. Next habit, don't eat your emotions. This is one of those easier said than done things. Well, it's easy for you to say, Josh. Well, no, it's not. I mean, yeah, it is easy to say, but that's not the point. The idea is that if you're constantly self-medicating with food or alcohol, you're not learning how to deal with the situation. You need to learn how to develop healthy coping mechanisms that don't involve binging or self-medicating with external substances, especially when it's a recurring thing. And that's obviously not an easy thing, but once we start to recognize those habits, we can start going, right, so every time I have a bad day at work, I go and drink a 6-pack of beer. It's like, okay, well, you're feeding your emotions and you're losing your ability to actually manage them and develop healthy coping mechanisms. So once we start to recognize that, we can do something about it. Again, bringing in consciousness. Let's see here. Treats or treats. This is another one of those ones that can be very, very mind-opening for people. A treat is something that is earned. It's a reward for something special. It can be a thing, it can be an event, whatever it is, but it's something that's earned. How often do we hear people saying, oh, I'm going to just need a little treat. I'm just going to have a little treat. I've earned this. But if you're reaching for the same treats every night or same time every week, whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, that's not a treat. That's your diet. Mm-hmm. If it's happening all the time, if it's happening on a consistent schedule, it's just your diet, no matter what it is. Doesn't mean it's good for you, but it's your diet. A treat is earned. You don't get a treat for going to your 9 to 5 because you're going to do that every day for 45 years. Then you're not treating yourself. You're just eating your emotions. And that one can be a bit of a game changer when you start to realize that.
When I was watching your TEDx talk, I realized that I might have a dessert lifestyle.
Yeah, that's fine. You can do that. You can have that balance in your life, like we have takeaway food once a week in my family. On Thursday nights, there's a food van that pulls up around the corner. We usually get that. Once a week, that's our thing. It's not a treat because we do it at the same time. It's just ritual. It's habit. We love it. It's enjoyable. It fits the overall balance of our diet and lifestyle. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But once you recognize it, you can decide if it serves you or not.
Right. Very good.
Got one more habit.
All right.
Last one is mistakes happen. Because throughout all this, you're going to make mistakes. And a mistake is anything that you do that is in opposition to your goals. I'm trying to lose weight. I'm trying to watch my cholesterol, whatever it is. Excuse me. If you then go out and say, I'm trying to lose weight, but I'm going to eat a whole pizza, that's a mistake, or you're out for a social event. A common one is like going out for drinks after work or going out for a birthday party. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I need to be mindful. I'm just going to well, there's not much here. So I'm going to eat some pizza for dinner. Okay, no worries. Have a slice of pizza. But then if you go, well, now that I'm eating pizza, I might as well eat the whole pizza. That's a mistake. It's you're just using that as an excuse, but that's fine. The worst thing we can do is let that experience derail everything we've been working for and give up. We're just going to keep eating and we're going to keep drinking. And I'm not going to worry about what I'm eating for the rest of the week. Whatever. It's usually a guilt reaction. But if you just realize that mistakes are going to happen, and sometimes life's going to get in the way and you're not going to have any other choice about the quality of your food, that's fine. Tomorrow, just go back to eating normally. Problem solved. A mistake's just a speed bump if we let it be, and if we learn from it.
That's right. There's a compassion in that. We're all human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall off.
Absolutely.
It's smart to build that in.
Yeah, because that's probably the only guaranteed. The whole thing, the only guarantee is that you're going to mess up at some point. And you can either use that as a learning experience or as a way to derail everything you've been working towards.
Yeah, and it strikes me that eating your emotions is got to be the most challenging part. That's something that I have noticed and struggle with, and especially when you get triggered by something and something that is your number, the emotions rise up and you're looking for ways to manage it. And so having go-tos for each of those is got to be key.
Yeah, and it starts from just recognizing the pattern, which is hard. I'm not saying that's easy. And usually it takes someone hitting a rather uncomfortable situation in their life to recognize that. But by starting to sort of pay attention, hopefully you can recognize those habits a bit early before they become too detrimental.
Do you ever get into that into your coaching practice? What are your triggers and when you're falling down?
I don't actively search those out, but I find them out pretty quickly. A lot of people aren't super aware, but because of what I do as an immersive coaching experience, so I work through an app, I'm in my clients' pockets every day of the week. I know what they're doing. I know what they're, ticking, what boxes they're ticking, what they're doing with their food, with their training. I learn a lot about the people I work with because it's an everyday thing. And I learned very quickly, like, hey, I noticed that this thing happened at work again, and I didn't hear from you from 3 days. Maybe we need to address that. So I'm very experienced at pattern recognition.
So you can supply some of the pattern recognition when your client doesn't necessarily have that awareness.
And that's one thing that most people have a hard time seeing for themselves, is you kind of need that external viewpoint going, you do this every time this thing happens? And they're like, I never even realized.
Well, that's a good tip. If this thing keeps happening, it's a good cue to look at what was the trigger and finding go-to habits, whether it is a walk or a run or meditation, walking meditation, or primal screaming or Brazilian Jiu Jitzu, whatever it is for you. How do you work through it instead of binge eating or what it happens to be for you?
Right.
I could talk to you for probably another hour or two about all this stuff, but I know you've got a day to attend to here. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you and have you on the show. I'll provide links to all the things we mentioned, your business and your talk and anything you send along too. But for people listening, where can people find out more about you and your businesses?
Yeah, well, if you feel like coming to Hobart, Tasmania, just look me up. I'll show you around. But aside from flying across the world, you can find me on Instagram, Coach Josh Wood. LinkedIn, it's the same. Actually, every platform, I'm Coach Josh Wood. My website is strongforlife.online. It's for Strong for Life online coaching. There's a bunch of free resources there. There's a backlog of all the podcasts and interviews I've done. Yeah, you could just find me on Instagram, though, and send me a question if you got one.
All right, check them out. Thanks so much, Josh.
Appreciate it.